Salutare, salutare! Hai să vedem ce mai face licuriciul nostru favorit, da, partenerul nostru strategic, da, Statele Unite ale Americii. Ce mai fac ele, dar nu în Ucraina, de data asta aruncăm o privire în Siria, ajutați de un jurnalist sirian care ne spune oful său cu americani. Ia să vedem ce i-au făcut de plânge atât.
In 2015, the Syrian army managed to push back ISIS from the deserts, and when the Americans saw that the Syrian and the Russian and the Iranian side they were going to crush ISIS, they have created a new force on the ground called Syrian Democratic Forces. The Syrian Democratic
Deci, ce s-a întâmplat? Sirienii, ajutați de ruși, au reușit să scape de ISIS și americanii au spus, păi stai mă noi, ce facem aici? A? Avem nevoie de ISIS. Așa că au creat un alt ISIS. Super.
Forces are mostly YPG and the PKK forces, and there are around 60,000 fighters. And these fighters, they managed to occupy the oil and gas fields on the eastern shore of the Euphrates. If you allow me, I will show the map of control of Syria, and I will
petrol și gaz. Ia uite, da? Deci asta este harta Siriei, da? Hai să lăsăm pe jurnalist să ne spună ce înseamnă culorile alea.
Just for the audience to know how the Syrian geography looks like today. This is the entire Syrian geography. The red one is controlled by the Syrian army, and the yellow one is controlled by the American forces, and also this green side is occupied by the American forces.
Cum? Stop! Oprește-te puțin. Oprește-te. Du-te înapoi. Stai așa, păi să ne uităm. Deci, americanii ocupă porțiunea cu galben. Ok. Din prima observăm că, din punct de vedere procentual, americanii ocupă o porțiune mai mare din Siria decât ocupă rușii din Ucraina. Și, ce să vezi, mai ocupă și porțiunea asta verde. Bizar, nu? Ok, aici putem înțelege că dacă ne mijim ochii, vedem aici niște simboluri care arată ca niște sonde. Hei, petrol și gaz. Ce-or face aici pe porțiunea cu verde, dar hai că o să aflăm. Ia, hai să vedem.
If we zoom in just a little bit, we will see that all these areas are full of gas and oil fields. And those are the areas that the American forces are stationed, and they are looting the oil of Syria. Actually, they are extracting it, and then they are sending it to Iraq. And from Iraq, it is going to other countries. And the United States is basically...
Deci, americanii, oameni harni și gospodari, după cum îi știu, au văzut niște sonde care stăteau așa acolo, părăsite, prăfuite și au spus, hai domne, să le readucem la viață, da? Și au început să recolteze petrol, să extragă, ăsta e termenul. Bravo lor! Da, așa oameni mai rari, săritori, nu?
Also financing its stay in Syria through the revenues of the oil fields. But most also famously, this area, the green area, is also occupied by the United States, because the US forces, they want to block any trade route and trade activity between Syria and its neighboring countries. This is the most important...
Bă, nene, asta, pe bune acum, asta este deja o acțiune agresivă. Băi, vedeți-vă de recoltatul, sondatul, extrasul petrolului, da? Și lăsați-i pe aia să facă comerț cu ce le-a mai rămas prin țară. A, nu, nici asta nu vreți. Dă-i dracu, bă, dă-i dracu. Mă rog, hai să vedem, poate se întâmplă altceva ce nu o prind eu.
Border crossing of Syria to do trade with Jordan and Iraq. And as you can see, the United States is blocking Syria not to do business in its neighboring countries through this border crossing, and also looting and occupying the oil fields on the eastern shore of the Euphrates, where it is clear on this.
Dar de ce tot spune că jefuiește petrolul? Îl extrag, așa se numește, da? Americanii extrag petrolul sirienilor. Dacă ea sunt puturoși și nu pune mâna să le extragă, s-a găsit altcineva mai harnic.
Right. In fact, Stephen Gowans, in his great book Washington's Long War on Syria, says that Syria comparatively doesn't have as much oil as its neighbors. So
Neauzi.
that's like a
Nici
perk.
măcar nu au cine știe ce petrol pe acolo. A? Îi fac vecinii de rușine. Bă, dar nici pe ăla puținul pe care l-au, nu au fost în stare să și-l extragă. Au trebuit să vină americanii să le arate cum se face.
For the United States, what they really are interested in is blocking Arab nationalism. And in fact, they've been doing this since Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, was in power. So that is not new. Would you agree with that?
Actually, that's one of the reasons why the United States has been targeting Syria. It's the pan-Arabism of Syria, which is a model of uniting the Arabic countries, not on ethnic lines, but rather on the interest lines. And what is the interest of the Arabic countries is to have a sovereign countries, is to have economic integration, and also to liberate their natural resources, to keep it for themselves. And this was the project also by Jamal Abdel Nasser, Hafez al-Assad, and later also Libyan leader Gaddafi, President Bashar al-Assad, and you can see all these leaders
Ușoară să-i fie țărână.
were targeted.
And Saddam Hussein
Yeah,
also
yeah. So
was interested.
the problem with Saddam Hussein was that he came to power in the late 70s and early 80s with the support of the CIA, so that he fights against I would say Iran. But later, when he felt that he has a big power in the region because he considered this war as a victory for himself, he started to go against the American interest, and that's when the Americans intervened and they tried to crush Saddam Hussein at the beginning of the 90s when he invaded especially Kuwait. Although the American ambassador in Iraq back then
Atenție la faza asta, că va fi foarte interesantă. Concentrați-vă dacă ați ațipit cumva între timp.
she told Saddam that they're not going to do anything if Saddam invades Kuwait. So basically they trapped him to go into Kuwait, and when he invaded Kuwait, the Americans came and bombed him in Iraq.
Da? Și au băgat același text pe care îl bagă acum și în relație cu Putin. Dictatorul!
I want to just mention
Invadatorul, bă, stai așa că Saddam chiar era invadator. În fine, hai să trecem peste.
one thing, if you
It's
allow
not a
me.
good story of friendship.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would just mention one more thing. Danos
Atenție,
Shoshi is
ia.
the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, now under the
Vedeți o titulatură de asta mare. Secretarul adjunct al apărării pentru Orientul Mijlociu. Hai să vedem.
Biden administration 2 years ago. She has a famous
Administrația Biden are o declarație, am apucat să aud, famous, da, celebră,
statements in a panel about the Syrian war. She says, the United States owns, in her own words, the United States owns 1/3 of Syria, and the United States owns Syria's carbohydrates, and the United States owns Syria's food basket. And she says this.
Okay.
She literally mentions these
Wow.
words, and she says the United States owns these carbohydrates and the food basket of Syria in order to have a leverage over the outcome of the Syrian war in a way that it serves the interests of the United States. They do not
Well,
mention.
that's news to me as an American. Didn't know that. Can my passport take me there?
Actually, if you want to go to Syria
Yeah.
now as a journalist, as an American journalist or any foreign journalist, if you have friendly opinions about the United States forces in Syria, they would allow you to go near even the oil fields where the American forces are located, and then you are forced, of course, according to an agreement with the U.S. Defense Ministry, to post tweets on X and say that the Americans are, quote, guarding the Syrian oil fields in order.
Păi stai că de fapt americanii chiar păzesc, da, câmpurile alea petroliere siriene, dar le păzesc să nu se apuce sirienii să extragă de acolo. Da, așa e, da?
To block ISIS from having an access to the fuel of Syria. But let me
Aha, deci asta este justificarea lor. Ok, I get it.
remind everyone what ISIS did with the Syrian oil. ISIS stole the Syrian oil with hundreds of barrels per day,
Okay.
probably thousands, and they were these tankers. They were taking the fuel of Syria they were marching to Turkey, and their satellite imagery for that.
În Turcia la NATO acolo, nu? Frumos!
Of them marching to Turkey, which is a NATO country, and the son of Erdogan, Bilal, Erdogan's son Bilal, he was the person in charge of getting the oil and giving the revenues to ISIS. So ISIS became a state, and they were just an organization, but then they declared themselves as a state because they had an economic independence. And that happened thanks to a NATO country. And let's remember that the United States has one of the biggest military bases outside the United States. It's in Turkey, it's in Incirlik. And this was happening all under the watch. And the satellite imagery of the United States, they did nothing. And then when the Russians intervened, the first thing they did, they cut this lifeline of ISIS, which was taking the oil of Syria to Turkey.
Vezi cu ce se ocupă rușii ăștia? Se pundea curmezișul. Aveau oamenii ăia un business acolo, da? ISIS cu turcii. Care e problema rușilor, mă? A? Pă bune.
And getting back dollars. But what happened afterwards? The United States just replaced ISIS with something called the Syrian Democratic Forces. So it's still the same. Just the looters are different now, and the revenues of this oil are...
Aici, dacă înțeleg bine, americanii sunt întâmpinați cu prietenie de către Siria, da? Poporul vecin și prieten cu americani. Chiar, bă, ce caută aia, frate, din America până hăt în Siria? Dar stai puțin, că și Ucraina e departe.
Going to the people's benefit in Syria, and Syria estimates the losses over $100 billion. $100 billion.
Wow, 100 de miliarde de dolari. Se aude? Wow!
Half the damage that happened to the cities and the governorates of Syria in the past 12 years.
Yes, well, let's put a fine point on that, because what they're demanding this week is they're demanding a return of the land that the United States occupies and the oil and gas fields of the Syrian state. They're also saying that the U.S. has stolen, the number they put is $115.2 billion worth of oil at an average of 150,000 barrels per day.
Yes.
So the big question here is, what is the United Nations going to do about this? And I think it's a good time to remind our audience that last year when UN Deputy Spokesperson General Farhan Haq was asked about this, he was very confused when Chinese journalist Deng Zhu.
Acel jurnalist chinez este Dumnezeu. O să-l vedem cum se desfășoară. Wow!
Asked, he's like, I don't know, this not the same. It was an amazing piece of video.
Yes.
Hai să saburăm. Mă pun aici ca să-l vedem și pe oficialul UN și uitați-l și pe jurnalistul chinez să vedeți ce relaxat e și cum îl face pe ăsta. Hai.
Couple of questions on Syria. Yesterday, there's a drone attack to a U.S. base in northeast Syria, which resulted in one death and 6 injured. After that, U.S. launched a airstrike, also killed 11 people in Syria. Any reaction from the Secretary General on this incident?
Oh, well, of course, we continue to be worried about all of the continuing tensions and
Ce începe ăsta să o bage pe aia a lui Iohannis, cu urmărim cu atenție și îngrijorare. Da? Un limbaj de ăsta de lemn care nu spune practic nimic. Da?
are trying to see what can be done to lower the tensions from different forces in Syria, and we'll continue with those efforts.
Continuăm să ne îngrijorăm. Da? Dar stați că jurnalistul nostru chinez nu o lasă așa.
Do you not urge everybody to respect the sovereignty and territorial?
Bă, treaba ta e nu să urmărești și să speri și să te rogi că se vor reduce treptat pensiunile. Și treaba ta e să somezi, băi, prietene, care-te de pe teritoriul unui stat care nu te vrea acolo. Prietene licurici, care-te. Hai.
Well, of course, that's a given, and obviously it's important that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria is respected. At the same time, you're aware of the complexity of the situation of foreign forces, but we call for them to exercise restraint.
But do you think the presence of the U.S. military in Syria is illegal or not?
That's not an issue that we're dealing with at this stage. There's been a war.
But is that
there's
because it sounds very familiar. This week we talk a lot about the UN Charter, the international law, and relative resolutions. But it sounds to me a foreign military-based presence in another country without invitation sounds like something else to me. You know?
Sounds like an invasion. Da, frate, sunt unii pe teritoriul lor și au venit acolo neinvitați. Și ăla spun, bă, cărați-vă de aici. Nu, vă apărăm resursele.
I'll leave your analysis to you. There's at this stage.
What's the difference
at this
between
stage,
Syria,
there's no,
the situation in Syria and the situation in Ukraine?
There's no UN.
I-a băgat-o pe aia cu Ucraina. Gata, e în fibrilație omul nostru. Aoleo, mi-e jenă mie de părul lui alb, așa ceva.
As armed forces inside of Syria. And so I don't have it's not a parallel situation.
You're sure there's no U.S. military personnel?
I believe there's military activity.
I-a întins capcana. Bă, sigur nu există militari americani cu acte în regulă acolo în Siria?
Yeah.
But in terms of ground presence in Syria, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, 5 U.S.
Și pac, s-a închis capcana. Deci nu e sigură că există, nu există? Ia, stați că îți citește băiatul.
U.S. members were injured in that attack. If there were no U.S. soldier service members in Syria, how could they got injured?
Păi, vă spun eu cum. Bă, deci, oamenii ăia stăteau, spălau vase, se uitau la televizor în Siria și nefiind atenți ce s-a întâmplat, s-au tăiat cu furculița, da? Și s-au rănit și au trebuit să fie pansați. Da, dar erau la ei în Americuță și priveau cu atenție și îngrijorarea de sigur evenimentele. Eu așa zic. Ia, să vedem ce zice băiatul ăsta de la ONU.
That's weird, right?
Asta îi răsucește cuțitul urană sau chiar furculița, nu? Bă, e ciudat, nu?
Yeah, about that. And by the way, if you're talking about the resolution, the international law, here is the resolution from Security Council 2020. Sorry.
Tocmai când vrea să-i dea decisiunea a dat în bălbăial.
2254, I believe. It says in its PA paragraph, reaffirming its strong commitment to the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic, and to the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and as you see, that is accepted by.
Ăsta l-a luat cu toate transpirațiile. Să-l scoată cineva, bă, era sala goală și doar un chinez mic în sală. Și credeam că o să stau și eu, să am o după amiază plăcută, nu o să fiu deranjat. Bă, nu mai am loc de chinezul ăla. Mă rog, de jurnalistul ăla chinez, da?
Members of the Security Council itself.
Yeah, so back to
apă.
my question. Is that
Beau apă. Conform sistemului, mai minte omul, dar mai bea și apă, ia.
illegal to have presence in Syria for the US base?
According
to
e ilegală prezența Statelor Unite în Siria?
relevant resolution that I just read out.
Yes, the relevant resolution does call for that, and we call on all countries to respect that. I wouldn't go beyond that at this stage.
So,
Tare! Mega tare!